Hey, and a very good morning to you, and welcome to the pre-market rundown for TriggerCharts on Friday, December 10th, 2021. Hey, I'm Andrew Horowitz. I am the co-founder and the architect of TriggerCharts trading in terms of our indicators, our algorithms, and all the things that went into this, really, I think one of the best indicator platforms that you could find out there. We're going to talk about a lot of things today, talk about trading, what's going on right now in the markets. We see the futures are up. We see the YMs up 196, ES SPOOs up 35, and the Qs up 139. One of the best weeks we've seen in a while. Gold is pouncing higher at 1790 and moving up on what is of interest that we have worse inflation than we've seen since, the 80s. But in fact, maybe expectations were a little bit lighter or heavier, I should say, for what was going on. Before we get any further, I got to talk about the fact that this is information for educational purposes only, because investing, as you know, involves substantial risk, and past performance is not a guarantee of future results. You know, you can lose money, let's be honest. And what we're here doing and talking about today is all about the opportunities that are out there, but also, and I think very importantly, how to make sure that you're not on the wrong side of the trade. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to really understand the mechanics behind what we do with our indicators, because they're all based on two key points of things that you find every day in the market very easily. Everybody knows about them. It's not a secret, but how you then create and calculate, put it together with our algorithms to come up with levels that are support resistance, key areas of interest, levels that you just want to be on the bias to the long side, levels that you want to be on the bias to the short side, and easily color-coded. I mean, again, I tell you this all the time. The reason they're color-coded is nothing more than the fact that I need it easy for my trading process. I need to just take a look at a chart like we see on the right here and say, oh, hey, you know what? We're inside of a trade, outside of a trade. Green, well, that's good. We're on the long side of the trade on the daily, on the Qs, as we're seeing here. Well, we got short over here and then backed out of it. Bottom line is that, when you can really understand this and start looking at what's going on with charts that have these levels, whether they're inclusive of all the components of our Commander series, which, by the way, I will put a link in the chat if I can find it here. Let's see if I can find it. Here, I'll put this offering right there, first of all. You can get 4 hours of the Trader's Playbook for free if you sign up as a new subscriber to any of the Commander series. And there is where you can find the information on how, in fact, to get the Commander series. We have more things than that, of course. We have the KRI indicator, the key reversal indicator. We have a bunch of things out there that are also very, very helpful for traders. But bottom line is the thing that people use the most and where we get, we'll call it our flagship, is the Commander series, which includes several different components, the altimeter, the autopilot. We're going to look at the radar as well as the autopilot on a multi-time frame radar screen inside of TradeStation. So that's something to consider. So we got that out of the way. We talk about this. We're coming into where? The 10th of December, towards the end of the year, as trading gets a little bit bouncy and wonky due to the fact that we're getting into the end of the year, right? People have to make those trades that count, whether it's tax loss harvesting, where we're looking at, hey, at the end of the year, I've been trading, I got this, I've been investing, I got that, I've been holding this, I've been selling this. Where am I? What do I got to do to even out my gains, losses, so I don't pay a lot of taxes for 2021? Or setting up where they want to be for next year. So all that comes into play at this time. But right now, the theme, I got to tell you, and you look at the chart to the right, what's the theme that we kind of discovered from last week? Face rip. Face rip. I mean, the trend, which we know, there's no question, there's no surprise here. Nobody on this conference call right now, on this webinar, is going to be like, oh, God, that guy Horowitz is so smart. Look, he said the buy to dip V formation is something that's happening. Hello, we all know that. There's nothing new here. The question is, when? When are we at that point that the buy the dip, that V formation is going to happen like we see all the time, pretty much for the last couple of years? And when we look at some areas that are showing it, was it here? We saw this kind of, was that a good level? Was that, this one was a little bit less of a clear level because it was a one-day wonder where it just gapped up to the upside here. But what we're seeing is that these buy the dips, where we're seeing that we have a level of support, right? These key support levels that come into play. And these key support levels, when we can extend them, are really the clues. They tell us what we need to understand and know where it is that the potential is for a turnaround. So buying the dip here, V formation, it's ongoing. Even though the Fed has been talking about bringing some of the overall liquidity out of the markets. In other words, right now, between the Fed at zero interest rates and between the stimulus that we have out there, there's I think there was some thing I read last night, there's another upwards of $1 trillion from the stimulus bills, the total of the $4.5 trillion that was put out over the last 6 bills that has still not yet been paid out. Now you think about that, there's a lot more money that's out there. So what's happening is that really any news that we see right now, any news has been really kind of very reactive in the markets. And let me kind of circle a few things on the chart to the right here. We saw that, hey, we had some really good things happen and, markets were moving well. Technology started moving up. We had all-time highs and almost, oh my God, we have Omicron. Omicron was going on, right? Or Omicron or whatever it's called. The new variant, and everybody's freaking out about this. Then it's like, hey, my God, it's terrible. And then wait a second. Maybe it's not as bad as we think. Maybe the vaccines will work. Maybe, in fact, this is just no more deadly than a very, very simple flu or the common cold, which is something that takes us back, obviously, to 2020. But whatever your feeling is on this, whether you're a vaxxer or not, or believer in boosters, or, conspiracy, or it's just real, or the pandemic's on, the pandemic's over, it's a government conspiracy. I don't care. It doesn't matter what it is. We don't care. Fact is, let's trade it, right? Let's look at what the news is. We saw some oversold conditions, and I'm going to bring that up right now. When we look at the KRI, we saw look at that. If I go back on the chart here, when's the last time you saw a green dot? That was on the 3rd. On the 3rd, and a major reversal the next day, a rip-your-face-off rally into that. This should have told you a couple things. Number one, depending on what side you were on, hey, maybe I should lighten up some of the shorts if I'm short, or maybe get into some positioning on the long side. I talked about this ad nauseum, the whole idea that, moving up along this whole line, look at all these red dots, these clusters that were forming. I said, that's a really big concern of mine. And you know what? We really need to watch out for this situation. Because when we see that kind of level of overbought or overheated market, when we start seeing, this dial start hitting in this range over here, and it's consistent, and we see it not really backing off for some time, and then all of a sudden we start seeing it moving down and moving lower and moving lower and moving lower. And then we get an oversold reading like this. Hey, that's really exciting, to be honest with you. That's one of those times you want to say, what can I do to get involved? It may not be long before we see a turnaround. Just like in the top line here, it wasn't long before we saw that turnaround. Bottom line is that you want to watch all these different indications that's going on. And clearly, when we saw that the reversal on key support and that reversal alert that came in, that was something really to be very importantly watched. And that really happened right about on this day, on this drop right here when we held support. And then we got some wonkiness and then this rip your face off rally to the top end that hopefully you were involved in getting some really nice numbers, because some of the stocks, and not only the indices, but the individual stocks got hammered, absolutely obliterated. And I'm sure a lot of you that are there are shaking your head yes right now and saying, hey, yeah, I did get hurt in that situation. By the way, just to mention, we'll get to this, but in the chat, please do me a favor, and you do this quite often when I mention this, and I want to mention it right about here where I just put in the chat, put in your symbols. We'll take a look at whatever you want to look at, whatever that symbol may be, because don't forget, our indicators are symbol agnostic. In other words, you can use Forex, you can use cryptocurrency, futures, you can use ETFs, stocks, whatever you want to use. That is what this is built for. And the reason it works so well is because it takes those two components that I talked about earlier. The idea of simply using the idea of volume and price, collecting every single bit of data that's out there on every single tick, every single buy or sell order, and putting it into a calculation to find out really what is playing in the markets. And, by the way, I want to thank everybody for making us the number one indicator overall in the trading app store from a rating overall for the number of ratings that we have, and 4 and 5, mostly 5-star ratings, but also due to the fact that the emails that I get from you about the money that you make and how we've also helped you not bleed. lose money. If you're one of those people right now that are on here that have not yet tried this, listen, it's the end of the year. You get a 10-day free trial that will take you through towards the end of the year in a really good trading position. For $149 a month, not buying this, one small trade for that matter, will make up all the difference on a monthly basis. I mean, it really, if you really think about it, this tool that is making so much money for people is something that I think if you don't have right now, I really don't understand it. I don't even know how I would trade anymore without utilizing these. Seriously. Let's talk about yields. You got yields again, right? The yield issue that we're talking about, we're range bound, but sharp moves. We saw this 1.3 to 1.7% yield. Let's see if I have that. Do I have it here? I don't have it here. I don't have that right here. But we saw the yields move in this range, right? We saw this 1.7% top end, pretty much corresponded to the Qs and corresponded to the markets topping out, bottomed out at the same point. Right now trading about 1.45 or so, but that's a big move, and that is really starting to cause big problems. As yields move up, I do have a concern that we will see the continuation of the wonkiness and the lagging of the Qs compared to the SPOOs, compared to the YMs. Value stocks, the banks, better play than technology. Now, it may not be by a wide margin, but I do think that is something to really take a look at. I think we got to mention also the Bitcoin trade over the weekend. We'll get to that in a second, but it's starting to move really nicely. Up 4% today, up close to about the 50,000 mark again. But we're seeing that taper speed increases. We saw that from the discussion of the Fed last week, and that's something really to look at. USD peaking, US dollar peaking. I was also thinking that, looking at unhedged positions in emerging market or currency pairs that will be looking as the US dollar may be peaking out, and you'll see that kind of roll down. That will be beneficial for the long side of the currency trade that is against the dollar. The barn, if you've ever been horseback riding, once you get to the end of that trail, that trail they make out there, right, that you go around and you think you're really riding the horse, but in fact, it's just a giant ride where you're going around and around. Well, if you ever done one of those kinds of things, well, the horses smell the barn at the end of the ride. At the end of that hour or so, hour and a half, all of a sudden the horses kind of pick up, their ears pick up, and they're trotting and they're moving without you doing anything. Why? They smell the barn. They know they're getting you the hell off their back. And they're excited. Well, here is where we're going at the end of the year. The horses or the traders smell the new year. Seasonality favors the bulls. Remember that. Write that down. Think about that. Seasonality favors the bulls when it comes to the end of the year. You've heard of the Santa Claus rally. That's something that's real. We have a significant end-of-year volume potential. Watch list should be ready. And this is something I really want to talk about for a second. What are you doing to create a watch list, to be on top of it, to understand where you are, to add to that, to remove things? Listen, you not only I want you to add things to your watch list on a regular basis, but I want you to also think about, maybe I should remove something. What happens with a lot of traders that I've seen is they get so fixated on particular instruments that they put everything else aside. They say, I'm trading this. Now, there's something good to be said about that. On one hand, I got to say, kudos. If you're trading a particular instrument, well, stick with it. However, don't exclude other opportunities at the same time. Maybe there's something that could be better. So think about, if you're trading a particular security, what else may be similar to that or totally different that you also can set your sights on. Put it on a watch list, learn the action, learn the ranges, understand what's happening. Maybe there's a better setup that's going on. Maybe there's a better opportunity. Create that watch list all the time. Maybe you have a smartphone, get a notepad out and start putting ideas on it. And then when you come into your trading platform, or maybe you're trading from your phone, or maybe you're trading at your office, wherever it is, put that on the watch list. Make a separate area and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to watch this for a while and see what happens. Maybe there's an opportunity that comes in. Do your study, your research, your analysis on the name, on the chart. Figure out what makes it tick. And then from there, what you can do is simply put it on the watch list and maybe, trade if something comes along. So something there. Crypto over the weekend. Oh man, hopefully you're all doing a little bit of watching of this, maybe trading this, because the ranges have been just absolutely beautiful. The fact is that we're seeing wide ranges right now due to a lot of different reasons. Again, it could be end of year issues. It could be just simply due to dollar movement, inflation. It could be, the whales moving in and out of their cold wallets. And, there's a lot of different things that could be happening right now. But Make sure to use limit orders on support, sell stops. Question is, what are you trading? Right? Are you trading futures? Are you trading the spot using TradeStation, a Coinbase, or whatever you're using out there? Bottom line is that look at the charts on this, because I will tell you and I will share with you, and we'll do this in a second. I'll move over in the other segment. There's been some really good support levels that you could have been trading off of that we drew lines on with our altimeter from the Commander Series. This week we saw initial claims historically low. CPI today, 6.8%, a little bit higher than the 2% on a year-over-year basis, 0.5 on a month-over-month basis. Next week we have a Fed rate decision. This is going to be important because they're going to talk about potentially the taper and maybe speeding up the taper. We got import-export prices, housing starts, the Philly Fed. Let me stop doing that. Sorry. That's all coming next week. I talked about the 4-hour coaching program and some stocks that we're going to watch. Some of the ones from last week were absolute crazy. Moved beautifully. And then the beginning of this week, if you kept those on your watch list, that's why I build that for you. Wow, those returns were beautiful. You know, one of them we're going to talk about is Upstart. I talked about this back when I saw that the Upstart, which doesn't really matter what it does. We'll talk about AI, loan, mortgage related / back end. Bottom line on this was I saw this starting to roll over. There was a short opportunity that presented. It was holding for a while. This is kind of a classic chart. When you look at this chart right here, say, wait, look at this. Really, we saw this really nice consolidation in this area. I'm going to actually bring it a little bit higher. This consolidation, generally speaking, in this area, a couple of different altimeters that made that part. But you know what? Below that, there's just not a lot. It's just when I start looking from right to left, like I talk about all the time, you take our arrows and just visually look this way. I don't see a lot of real significant amount of areas that people are really piling into. I could say, yeah, this was an interesting line right here, and maybe this line, there was some spots where it touched, but generally speaking, I didn't see anything. I said this set up as a short position opportunity, if you remember that a few weeks ago. Well, this did turn out from a nice move we saw right about from the 310 level, that this kind of moved down, and you saw the out right about there at about 198. That's about 100 points right there. Short again at about 194. Out. Pretty much an even Steven right there. Right now in a consolidation, a gray area, nothing happening. Up a few points before the market starts today. But when I look at this, I saw, this is just not a healthy looking stock, especially because on the bottom of the aileron, which is a add-on, it looks terrible. The momentum was just slowing down. It looked awful. Then we have MTTR, which is Matterport. We saw this really nice move that we called some weeks ago on this, moving straight up, doing beautifully. Bit of a blow off top, holding support here. Now we got a range that's questionable. So what would I do right now? So I like this from a long-term hold and kind of trading around it. We're seeing a couple things that are happening right now. One, within this range, I will call it right about there. Let's kind of split that right here. There's some support there. We can connect a few lines across. Nothing really exciting. Nothing just like, wow, I have to get it there. We see a little bit of the waning of the overall. If you kind of look here, we're seeing that it's coming in a little bit, and we're seeing that there's a bit of a waning of the overall momentum. Okay, two things not that great. However, where are we? Well, right now we're in kind of a dedicated, in a daily basis, area that's like, it's not really the greatest long. Take off a little position, add a little bit back, depending if we pop to the support. You nearly need to see that. I'll draw another line. We'll kind of keep us on a chart. You can alert this for yourself. Nope, that's not what I want to do. I want to go here. Put a line in right about here. About the 27 right there. 27.36 is really, which is right now, we're about 8% away from that, 7% away from that. Before the market opens today, that's where you start to see of interest. You get above that, you're going to see this screaming higher. There's really nothing to the left of significance. Support would be probably right here, like I said, 26 and change. You're probably right above that. May see some resistance at that point. I like to see this turn up before you get a lot heavier in that position. Here's another crazy name. This I thought was a really classic move on a stock. What do? Who cares? They do something with the back end and travel and something to do with points and blockchain, something. Bottom line, I may have that totally wrong, but there's something about that going on. What we saw here was this really great move up when somebody decided this was a discovered stock. We saw this big move up from, the $10, and let's not even go back further because it's really low. But the $10 move shows me it probably was a SPAC up to 51. Then from there, we saw this just deliberate move down, down, down. However, what we saw was, once again, right there, 1229. If you were looking at this and concentrating and focusing on this, what you saw was a bit of a change to the momentum started coming up. And then if you would have drawn a line previously, if you would have drawn your own line previously, not waited for the aileron to come in right there, you would have had about 11 or 12 bucks, we'll call it, right? On 12 bucks, you would have seen, hey, wait a minute, this is starting to roll up a little bit. Hold on a little bit. Let's try to get in. You would have tested this out. I'll tell you why. The trade here would have been, again, you could have did this on a daily chart. It doesn't matter how you translate this to a weekly chart, to a 15-minute chart. The trade here is that momentum was turning, exhaustion was happening on the sell side, and the potential was also, we didn't see that much momentum. Look at this momentum. It's only down the negative 20s, whereas on a top end, when we saw that momentum up on the plus 60s, old momentum on the downside was negative 60. So this wasn't really that harsh of a momentum move on the downside. And then we started seeing it rolling up. Interesting. Then on top of that, you saw that it held support really well after just an obliteration. Problem is, not a lot to go on here. Your top end right now, probably 1684, we'll call it. What is this exact number? Hover it. 1685. I got it close enough. What did I say? 1685. Right there, 84.85. Once you get past there, though, I would expect that you'd see another move and a short squeeze up to about 25. Put this on your watch list. Keep a watch on it. DWAC, another crazy name. Too short to really trade this, but you know what? This has a pattern that's very interesting. You got a SPAC, IPO, comes out, goes up from 16, a couple days later to about 165. Nice move. Back down all the way to about 35. Based out right there. Every bit of news is going to be exciting. What you have to watch for on this one is if you can get above the peak. It's a very simple chart on this one to look at. And I know this because this is what's going to draw in eventually. If you get above that, I would start really getting interested in this. Really above 67 again. It's tradable both sides. You could draw some lines in here, fuzzy lines, but not really perfect because there's not an aileron drawn too new. Or, excuse me, the altimeter drawn. Let's clean this up a little bit. Okay. Evgo, this is another one of those crazy charts. Similar look. You can see the same thing we talked about when we looked at, for example, BKKT, right? This big move up, totally down, shallow, move up, move down, shallow. Now, what was this level? I don't know. To be honest with you, I can't give you that unless I can go back further. I would not, sometimes you have to, I'm not going to make something up here and say this is the place. There was really no reason other than the fact that we drew some really good lines in here. And once you saw that line come in, this still on a daily basis hasn't gone from anywhere. It went from 9 to 19 back down to 11, and that's when you got out at about 12 and a half. You still made about 25% on it if you just watch this, but I got to tell you, this is just a little bit too wonky for me. Clearly $9.50 is a support area. The clearing here, where we got to get 13.35 is the clear. You're at 13.25 right now. If you could break above here, the potential is to move. I would look for not only breaking above our altimeter right here, but clearly above the top here would really set me off on something to look at the trade. And you can see a nice little squeeze going on there. Ethereum, so on a daily basis, this is pretty interesting. This is a daily chart, and you have to remember that it probably dropped a bit more overnight down into this range here, 38 and change. Maybe not. Over the weekend, it dropped to about 38, 37, 39. What is that right there? Low of 39.13. Yeah, it could be. We saw these really crazy moves, but one of the things I want you to really pay attention to here is look at how well it respects this line right here. It keeps on bouncing off that, give or take, that 4,020 line. You can even call 4,000 if you want, and then kind of getting right up until that 4,400 line, and that's something of important that you really want to watch. Same thing with Bitcoin, kind of really trading a little bit weaker, in my opinion. Ethereum's looking a lot better. These are lines we drew in some time ago. We saw it come down actually overnight to there was a quick trade, I think to 42 or so, which was down about the bottoms of the range in this here. Look at this, though. We're really seeing an oversold situation. I still think that you have weekend issues to come in. For me, I'd put a buy-in down at the 45,000 range, maybe, to see if it does something kind of a 10% wonk over the weekend. That looks like there's some decent support, a lot of clusters, a lot of lines crossing there. But, you're starting to see this oversold situation that's coming in. That is two things. Number one, confirmation of the fact the trend is down, but also you have the fact that, it may turn up on a quick short squeeze. Lucid looks terrible, up 4% in the pre-market today because everything's kind of up and holding up today. That's fine. But, just not looking really good. EVs are, you look at Tesla. I think Elon Musk is talking about selling some more shares. Tesla at support, 1,000 has been a really good level. If you kind of look at that, you got this 1,000 level right here. If we put it weekly, if we put it daily, we put it at any other number, 1,000 has been kind of good within a range. Moderna down very significantly today, down 32. This was a great stock also to recently trade. This pop-up, this movement on the upside, I would have probably sold it at 368. I actually shorted, put some puts on this, made some nice money. Sold a little bit early. I got the $300 puts on this. I bought it when it was probably about 360 or 350, and then made about 200% on it. But then it would have been a lot more right now. Playboy's interesting NFT play, holding the bottom there, right there, 34 and change. Let me mention PFE for somebody. Pfizer looks the same, holding. Nothing exciting there. If you listen, folks, I'll answer your questions and I'll kind of go over the stocks every single week. If you keep asking me each and every week about the same stocks, you're not really doing yourself any justice. Those are stocks that you're probably just holding on to. Those are stocks that you're investing in. That's not trading. We're talking about trading here. I want you to make you some money on the trading side. KWeb. Very interesting. This is the Chinese internet names. We talked about this consolidation right now, up a little bit, up to 43 or so. It's starting to turn this way. We got a little bit of a support level here. But the problem is once you get this going, you got massive, massive resistance in the 48 range. Well, you're going to go from 43 to 48 if you can get up there. So that's a good 5-point move, which is probably about 10%, 11%, 12% maybe even on that. So pretty interesting. The other thing is, let's take a look really quickly. I want to show you something real quickly. Last week, not only the KRI signal list, but a combination of the Spearman, which hit a negative 87 on the 3rd, and also right there, what date is that? Right there. On the 2nd, 3rd, we saw the McClellan at a negative 300. We haven't seen that in a while. Every time we do, it's a V. Right? Every time we see these numbers way hitting on the downside, it's a V to the upside. So usually that's what to watch. You combine that with the KRI that does one thing only, just looks at the SPY only. That's it, to give you a read on the sentiment within the markets. So I think that's really important to take a look at. What else did I want to show you here? I showed you the KRI, what you need to, oh yeah, I showed you that too. Okay, movers, that's what I wanted. Anything having Oracle's up about 16% pre-market. Major move on Oracle overall. Going to top out probably at let's see, is it 102 all-time high today? Definitely. American Outdoor Brands getting kicked up, down 16%. Chewy, bad numbers came in overnight. Anything else that's interesting here? MP Materials, I don't know what's going on there. Digital acquisition, DWAC, I talked about that. DWAC, the Trump SPAC. That's up 5% this morning. All right, listen, make sure to get yourself over to the TradeStation Trading App Store. Make sure to look at the videos that are on YouTube, on TriggerCharts.com as well. Education, training is all there. You are going to have a great week. Get those watch lists going. Make sure to get those trades in. You're going to do great. I want to make sure that you have a wonderful week. Thanks for joining me.